your task list on Onefile is an effective tool for understanding what tasks and activities that you've agreed to complete next. If you're unsure on how to make progress in your apprenticeship, you can always go into your task list and see what's been agreed to be completed next and when each activity is due. It can be useful to make a list when you're on a call with your assessor, but you can always rely on the task list being up to date to refer to. There's only a few ways to add a task to the task list. Most common, it comes in from a teaching, learning and assessment plan, or a task can be created based around some feedback or an email where it's been ticked to complete task to show that you've read that feedback or that email message on Onefile, or there's a scorecard, but most of them come through as a teaching, learning and assessment plan. To view your task list, go onto your Onefile homepage and select on tasks. That will then load up a page which looks like this. Note that the view that I've got is slightly different. It's a bit more condensed to the view that you will have. The view that you'll have will have a bit more detail, and it will also show any resources which have been attached also. This view shows your pending tasks by default. If you've been assigned a task in your teaching, learning assessment plan and it's not appeared in your task list, it's probably because it's a future task. So for example, if one of the learning activities is to attend a workshop in 2 weeks' time, the start date will probably be a week before you're due to attend that workshop, and so you'll find that if you change this status drop down to future planned tasks, it should appear here. Once the start date occurs, it will then move into your pending tasks. You can also use the same drop down to view completed tasks. There are two types of tasks which you can complete. One is a learning activity, such as attend a workshop, complete an online lesson, read a guide, and another is the assessment activities, which involves producing some evidence that shows that you're competent performing your KSBs in the workplace. The way that you complete these tasks is slightly different. To complete any task, you first must select on it from your task list. Let's start with a learning activity. If you select on a learning activity, you'll get a view that's a little bit like this. At the top of the page though, the task will be there with instructions and any resources. And if you scroll down, it will look like a journal entry. The only way to complete a learning activity is to create a journal entry by selecting on it, scrolling down and completing this form. Note that if you go straight into your journal, to create the journal entry, it won't close the task off. You'll have to go back into your task list and then close that task for that task to be removed from your task list. So give it a title, select the date, select the start time, select the duration, and note this isn't the finish time. Select a category and ensure off the job is ticked so that these hours get added to your timesheet. You can then add in the reflection, and if you've got any notes you can upload them here. Once you select create, that will close off the task list and create an entry in the journal to show that you've completed a learning activity. If you're going to complete an assessment activity, select on that task. Again, the instructions will appear at the top of the page. And if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see a form which is typical of the submit an assessment form on Onefile. So for this example task, the task is to update and communicate a progress tracker. Let's say in this, it's got here primary method of assessment is reflective account. Let's say you've also got witness testimony and work product. You can select the secondary assessment methods. You'll see that often there is criteria which has been set already. So that is the criteria that is planned to be covered in your assessment. So when you're producing your assessment, it might be worth reviewing this, reading through your assessment, making sure these points are covered. If the task doesn't cover these points because you haven't done it, you can select set criteria and remove some of the ticks. If you've found that you have covered additional KSBs that weren't planned, you can also select set criteria and select those KSBs which you've covered to indicate that it has been covered. But bear in mind, your assessor is responsible for making that assessment decision, therefore they'll review both your evidence and the KSBs which have been selected to ensure that it matches up. So in this example, a lot of it's been selected already, but let's say there's a KSB which hasn't been, so you'd select Set Criteria. You'd scroll down to find it. So let's say you've covered the project management outcome. This is the business administration standard, this example. Let's say these 2 points are covered, so you tick those, select Save, and then select Back. And that will add those criteria to the list. You can then add your evidence by either typing directly into Onefile or by selecting Add Attachment and then selecting Files to add it. You can then add some comments. Anything that you think might be relevant to your assessor, you can add here. Then you've got the timesheet button. So you'd want to record the time which you've spent completing this assessment, and it's recorded in minutes. Also ensure that Off the Job is ticked. That will allow these minutes to be added to your timesheet to record the time that you spent producing this evidence. And if you scroll down further, you'll have the declaration field, which looks like this. If you wish to save and come back to this assessment without submitting it, simply select Save and Quit. If you wish to close this task off and send the evidence to your assessor, tick the Send on Completion box and then select Save and Quit. That will send the assessment to your assessor and close off the task. And so that's how you close off the 2 most common tasks on your task list. Any other tasks will simply involve selecting on the task and marking it as complete.